Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. What I'm doing today is I'm presenting a very deep idea that I've learned from Bucky Fuller. It is about using these shapes in order to think. We are using this as metaphors for thinking. Deepest idea, or I keep saying deepest ideas of Bucky, there are so many of them. One deep idea of Bucky is that the tetrahedron is the minimal system. And I looked at tetrahedrons in multiple ways. I looked at tetrahedron like this, and like this. This one focuses on the vertex. This one focuses on the edges, and this one focuses on the faces. I also played around with this thing over here, which is, ask me what it is. It's a bunch of sticks. No, it is our friend, the most common thing out there. Give me just a second. It is there in here. There is the cube, which can turn very easily into multiple shapes. It can turn into this bundle of sticks. It can turn into a hexagon. Let me get you a hexagon here. Got an entangled here. Give me a second. There. A hexagon, it can fold nicely into 3 triangles, and then it can become a tetrahedron. It can become 2 tetrahedrons. It can become a skeleton of the tetrahedron. All of them is just amazing. But it's not very useful to me. I have settled on this. I'm not using tetrahedrons because I'm focused on the edges. And in edges, there are only 6 edges of the tetrahedron. You can see 2, 2, and 2. And my entire thinking is based on fourfold vision, 4 functions that interact with one another. So I needed something, and that something is this, our friend, the octahedron. In octahedron, you can see that there are these 4 colors, and they're going from this side to that side. See, this side has all 4 colors. This side has all 4 colors. And this frame between has all 4 colors. So what is this? What is this? So what is this side? What is this side? And what is this frame in the model of thinking that I'm using? I'm using Bhakti's ideas of systems. So the core observation he has is that any system has the inner, has inside, outside, and the membrane. So this is the inside, this is the outside, and this is the membrane. And we have used the 4 functions in multiple forms. We have used Carl Jung's 4 functions: feeling, the red; intuition, the purple; thinking, the blue; and acting or sensing, the green. We have used Bhagavad Gita. This is the devotion or Bhakti Yoga. This is Dhyan Yoga, the concentration on the truth. This is Jnana Yoga, understanding of the truth. And this is Karma Yoga, the action based on truth. At philosophical level, this is love. This is openness to truth, no matter what the cost. This is wisdom or verbalization of the truth. And this is virtue or effectiveness. All of us have all these 4, though we focus at a given time on one or the other, or a combination of 2 at a given time. So now I come to the model. So when I am talking to you, I am here. I have all these 4 characteristics. So this reminds me that if I'm focused on one of them, those other 3 are present. and I can never forget them. When I'm talking to you, it also reminds me here, this is me, inner, and this is you, the outer. It also reminds me that you have those four characteristics and that we are trying to talk to each other in a conversation. And what is this in the middle? This is the means through which we are conversing. For example, this is Zoom. We are conversing through this flat computer screen, if you will. But it's not just a screen. Again, based on Bucky, you should think of it as an event. It is the entire sequence of events in a Zoom meetup through which one person is communicating to the other. And that who this person is keeps changing, who this person is keeps changing. It could be multiple people, but it is being mediated through this frame. Now, Bucky spent a lot of time looking at systems. He says, I did not try to persuade people to change. So he's saying, I'm not focused on the other as such. I am focused on the system that we are all using in order to interact. That is what Bucky focused on. So let's see how you use this model. Okay. So firstly, the beautiful thing about the model is that you have a model for yourself and you have the model for the other person. And you have a model for what you are doing. And you can evaluate what you're doing. You can say, okay, what am I doing right? For example, in this presentation, I can say, have I put the motivation correctly? Is there enough emotion that I have put through saying why I should be doing this, why somebody should be listening to this? Am I open to noticing things about me, noticing things that are being said to me in order to correct things? That is this intuition part. I can ask myself, have I verbalized things precisely? Have I captured the deepest things that I want to say in explicit terms? And finally, am I being effective at doing that? I can evaluate myself on all of these things. I can evaluate the product, the Zoom meetings that we do day after day. What are these meetings? I can look at these meetings and I can ask myself, are we, so another way of putting it is that this red is loving. This is open. So loving, open, verbalized, effectiveness. So you can put it as LOVE, loving, open, verbalized, effectiveness. So and that is the standard that I'm using for anything that I make. Okay, I propose that as a standard where I can always check if all these four things are being met by everything that I'm doing. So in any conversation like this, is there this profound respect I have for the audience? So that is the regard, the positive regard for people. Because if that is not there, not just in my heart, see that my heart is here, but it has to actually come through in what I am doing, what product I'm putting out there. In this case, it is this speaking. So that lovingness, that authentic regard for the other person has to come through. Second, openness. Is that openness built into everything I'm doing? So I can evaluate the system of communication through that. Third is verbalized. Is it fully verbalized? Is it understandable? Has it been put, you can think of it as a vision, wisdom, Is it fully explicated? Can somebody actually understand what I'm saying? And that's a tremendous feat, because what we have to do is that you have to make sure that it is understandable, no matter who it is that is standing here. It has to reach them, even if they are focused on this part, or this part, or this part, or this part. It has to be in the system of what you're doing. It has to be fully verbalized. And lastly, it has to be effective. It has to make the effect. If it is not effective, then all of this is wasted. So it is an and operation of four things. So everything you're making has to be like this. And this applies to conversation. Now, now imagine this effect. So I want to now, so that is the standard for the system that is between you and the other. So there are three things here. You have to have a full acceptance of yourself as being this four-brain creature, if you will, having these four functions, four powers. You cannot put down one of them. You cannot ignore one of them, because you can't be complete without these four. Secondly, when you're looking at other people, you respect all the four things in the other person. And then when you're doing something that is producing something in the world, you make sure that all these four things are fully engaged. So that is a way of kind of mapping, taking these four functions and mapping it to the three parts that Bucky identifies of the system. Inner part of the system, outer part of the system, and the membrane, the thickness of the system itself. This is the thickness, this is inner, and this is outer. Now let's look at how things flow. Now, when there is an emotional communication, the way it flows is that it flows from you, it goes all the way up here, it goes always across through a specific means, and then it goes out towards the other person. Now, you actually do not see the other person very well. You have to accept that you don't know what is going on in the consciousness of the other person. So you have to be watchful about what it is that is coming back to you from them. Now, they might give you an action in response to what you've said here. They might give you some words. They might verbalize it. They might be open or closed to what you're trying to point to. And you have to try to sense that. Try to sense that. So the flow is always from you through the system outward. Okay. Now, the system can be quite complex. So you could maybe start with an intuition down here, and then you can express it as an emotion. Then you can show it in physical terms, and then you can explicate it. It impacts people through your words, or you can create your own words and people can intuit through that. So the motion of things going from you to the other involves some of your functions, some of the things that you have built into the system, and the specific impact it has on other people. And these are all variables. And you have to be aware of that. Like, for example, some people are very aware of the words, but not the emotions. Some people are very attuned to emotions, but not words. Some people are focused on the concrete things happening right now, but not focus on intuitions or patterns that are emerging from what is going on. So you have to realize that you have your own limits of what you can see better, what you can see worse, and the other person also has that. So one way to deal with it is to work very hard on your communication so that it has all these elements. So something or the other will reach the other person no matter who they are. So that is the way in which I am thinking about the communication. So it's basically a combination of two ideas here. One is the idea, for those people who have just come in, I want to summarize it very simply. This is application of fourfold vision to Bucky's idea of system. The fourfold vision holds that us as human beings have this fourfold nature, four functions, either through Jung or Bhagavad Gita, or in philosophy, I call them, my favorite way of referring to it is loving, so love, openness to truth, so loving, open, verbalized or wisdom, verbalized, effectiveness or virtue. So you can think of it as love, truth, wisdom, and virtue. Or if you want to think of it as one idea, the acronym I'm using is LOVE. That is loving, open, verbalized, effectiveness. So those are the four functions. There are multiple ways of thinking about the four functions. So this is the one that is my current favorite because it's just an acronym and it always starts with love, which is basically, this is the idea from Bhagavad Gita of Namaste. You're saying the God in me greets the God in you. So you're trying to connect to the other person at the deepest possible level, which really sets the right context for a very deep interaction and very positive interaction. So this part is you, where you have all these four functions of yours. This other part is the other person you're talking to, or other persons you're talking to, who also have this fourfold nature. This is the inner part of the system. This is the outer part of the system. This is the membrane of the system. This is the system itself, thickness. And the system also has this fourfold nature. And I'm focused on the edges of this octahedron, where things flow from you through the system to the other person. They flow in multiple ways. They go through different parts of the system. So you're trying to design a system. Again, Bucky is focused on the system. What is between people? He's not preaching to people or haranguing people and saying you're wrong. He is trying to design systems that will change lives. So these three parts, inner, outer, and the membrane, multiplied by these fourfold way, is what this model allows you to think about. Whether you have one of these as a primary go-to function or the other, I think it works very well. So I just wanted to share this with you. I've taken about 30 minutes. I have about 30 more minutes. Would love any comments or any thoughts anybody has. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand, or you can just unmute and tell me what you think if you have any observations. I know, Richard, you've just come in. Oh, but Trevor first. Go ahead.
I like it. Although I'm a very negatively oriented person, so first my default reaction to any idea is to locate shortcomings.
Please, I would love that.
I'm just thinking, you know, I think this would work good in a cooperative environment, like 52 Living Ideas, or in a situation where maybe management and workers are negotiating these sorts of things. But in an adversarial situation, politics or something like this, I think people are going to be, you know, people are very often single-dimensional thinkers. So one person is going to be they're going to be deliberately not following the intentions, or they won't exploit the utility of this design.
Wonderful. Let me go ahead and address that fully. Let me go ahead and do that. So it's a great question. So the first question is, you know, one can see how it can work in a collaborative context. What happens to this in an adversarial context? Okay. I think that I have found, I mean, this is true for Jung's functions, fourfold thinking, especially Jung's functions. I find that particularly useful in understanding the adversarial context, because many times the adversarial context consists of some people using certain functions. So let's say you're very conservative. Okay, I mean, I'm oversimplifying this, okay, deliberately, in order to give you an example of a very familiar adversarial situation. So let's take the general division. This is work that Jonathan Haidt has done very well. So it's like when somebody is conservative, what they are saying is that whatever is physically here, I want to maintain. And whatever thoughts are there are already there, and I want to just follow the thoughts. And the world needs the foundation of the core ideas and the core ways of doing things. Otherwise, everything is going to go to hell. That is the conservative part, conservative kind of a view. This is very much caricatured view, but I just wanted to give you as an example of how adversarial things. So suppose one set of people are like this, who are mostly what Jung would call TS. So ST mostly. The liberal approach is full of openness, and full of feeling, full of love. So it is mostly feeling and intuition. And what they are saying is that they're always looking at, so this one is all about order. This one is all about potential of what can be, and which sees the order as being something that is putting limits on what human beings can be. And there is that conflict over there. And what happens is that in that adversarial situation, the people who are here are not even seeing this inside them or in other people. Similarly, people who are here are not seeing the crucial importance of systems that are sustaining them. They do not see that. So now, if you understand a model like this, you can actually kind of look at it and say, oh, this is the interaction. They're actually, one person is talking like this, and these people don't have these lines at all to operate. So there is nothing going here. So people are actually people who are speaking here, they're not hearing. People here are not hearing, and vice versa. So there is actually no conversation. They're actually throwing words at each other, but they're not getting anywhere. So that's what I would say. Does anybody else have any comments? We don't have that much time, because I want to make sure that I close this meetup before the 9 p.m. meetup. So either Katie or Richard, do you have any comments? Richard, go ahead.
Well, I find it interesting in terms of the fourfoldness, and I'm always using the n numbers and the interconnection or relationship numbers that Fuller talked about in the formula of n squared minus n over 2.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at that model, I count 6 corners.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I can also count 12 interconnections on that model.
Mm-hmm.
But if I use the formula would say 6 times 6 is 36 minus 6 over 2 is 15. So
Mm-hmm.
there's 3 interconnections missing.
Mm-hmm.
And it may speak to the comment you were just making about in the middle there, from one side to then, when you say somebody was talking and somebody wasn't listening,
Mm-hmm.
It's empty. So there could be a line that goes from one corner to another, and that might capture then the interconnection that may or may not be one that has somebody talking and somebody else listening. But anyway, I'm always intrigued and so if I was using a hexagon,
Mm-hmm.
which also has 6 corners and would have the same 15 interconnections minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one of the things that's interesting is the relationship between the octahedron model and the hexagon model in terms of the number of interactions between the 6 numbered corners.
Absolutely. I'm just beginning, Richard, to explore all of these. I'm really intrigued by using 3-dimensional models as opposed to 2-dimensional. And what I'm also always trying to do is I'm also, I'm a big fan of using the pen and paper.
Mm-hmm.
So anything I'm doing in 3D, I'm always asking, how do I map this into 2D? And I think hexagon is a great way of mapping, mapping into 2D, the same kind of relationships.
Right. Yeah, I like the way the hexagon can in fact be in a 3-dimensional form, and also in 2-dimensional in the way that you've actually got it illustrated there. The octahedron is well, it can also be laid down flat so that it has 8 sides. But now you get 8 sides instead of 6 points. So that's the interesting thing in terms of moving the octahedron from the 3-dimensional down to the 2-dimensional.
Can you repeat what you said, Richard?
Well, I'm just saying that when you have the octahedron in the 3-dimensional model, the way you've displayed it there, and I count 6 corners.
Yes.
So when I use my little formula, it says that there should be another 3 interconnections to add up to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, but if I fold that octahedron down into a 2-dimensional plane,
Mm-hmm.
I will end up with 8 corners.
Yes.
Because it'll fold down flat.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be 8 corners. And then I use 8 times 8 minus 8 about 27 interconnections.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how you go from, with the octahedron anyway, between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, and you go from sort of 8 corners to 6 corners. So I don't quite understand the dynamics of that transition between one dimension and another, but when you display it like you've done, then it adds to the question, and it might even, speak to what's the preferred way to kind of model the interactions between a three-dimensional and two-dimensional model, or a representation of a octahedron or 8-cornered sort of system.
Absolutely. Great point, Richard. I mean, what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to build these for, all the platonic solids I've gotten from, like this one, tetrahedron, to the wobbly cube, and then now up to here. So now the next one is going to be dodecahedron and icosahedron. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to do this.
Well, what I like too about what Shrupi has done is that then I can see it. The tetrahedron model then is the 4 eyes. You go up to the octahedron and you can easily count the 8 eyes. And now it really makes good sense to talk about the 8 eyes of the octahedron. And then, exciting.
No, absolutely. No, I agree. I am biased, because there are 3 different ways of looking at these. You can look at this like this, where it is focused on the vertices. You can look at it like this, which is focused on the edges, or you can look at it like this, which is focused on the faces. And for my thinking, kind of using these, because what I'm doing is that I'm not really doing geometry. I am really doing, I'm really interested in using these as models for thinking. So I'm really thinking about this fourfold nature, and I'm trying to see and tease out the different relations between that. So that's what I'm trying to do. And for that, I find the edge model of saying, okay, what is really flowing between you and the other person, and how is it flowing, and what are the variables? What are the variables about you? What are the variables about the other person? And what are the variables about the system? And for that, I find that this model, which focuses on the edges, to be.
I think that's really important, to go from the focus on the faces of the old solid platonics to what I call a wireframe.
Yes.
What you've got there. And then it shows the edges, and the edges are like tension. So they're the critical part that holds the system together. And so I prefer looking at wireframes just like the way you're doing it, so that it allows you to focus on the relationships. The other thing that's really interesting, I don't know what the others might think, but the language we use today when we want to be all together and take action on something, we talk about solidarity. And solidarity to me represents the old platonic solids. Whereas the model you've got, the network model, is really what solidarity means. It means that we're all together in a network and of interaction. And so solidarity is the wrong word to capture a togetherness meaning of allowing people to talk and others to listen, and to go back and forth. So your model, to me, that you've got there is the real model of solidarity, only it should be another word, because solidarity drags us back to the platonic solid idea that when we're solid, there is no movement. And so we all have to, sort of be on the same page or believe exactly the same way. Whereas a network, like what you've got there, those edges, we can be in a dynamic network. We can be all together, but we can still have our dialogue, our differences, our opinions, and we'll come together in terms of a unified unit, but it won't be a solid unit.
Absolutely, beautifully put. I couldn't agree more, because what this is saying is that you have a nature and the other person also has a nature.
Yes.
And you are respecting both of them. It's the Namaste principle of saying the God in me greets the God in you as a starting.
Beautiful.
The best formulation I have heard of this is from my friend Yasuhiko Kimura. He says that he says it's like omnicentric universe. So it is center.
Yes.
So you have the center in you, but there are multiple centers. And all of us have centers in them. And we are interacting. These centers are interacting with one another. So that's what we're trying to capture here with saying that, you are this, you have this fourfold nature, and it is a flowing nature. You see, I imagine this flow going through the system, like physical system, to the other person, and the flow coming back from the other person to you. And this other person is an X. So anybody can be standing there, or any organization can be standing there, any family can be standing there, any group of people that you're talking to can be standing there. And so it's a way of, and when it is coming to you, it can be you in plural. So a group of people. So it's like it's a many-to-many interaction being captured in this very simple model. So Richard, thank you so much.